they seem to be on a trajectory that will lead them to that, to actually achieve that. Their inventory suggests that they are already 12.5% below, on a per capita basis, below 1990 levels in terms of CO2 emissions. In the area we're interested in, land use and transportation, how'd they do it? Well, you know, you've already seen this. One thing they did is and I'll talk a little bit about the tools they used, but one thing they did is they curtailed, or not curtailed sprawl, that's too strong, but they constrained urban sprawl, unlike some other places. And that had this effect on VMT. VMT went up slightly on a per capita basis, but very, very slightly compared to, for example, a Raleigh-Durham, or a Houston, or a Los Angeles, or most places in the U.S., probably Minneapolis, St. Paul. Okay, well, how did they get VMT to kind of level off? Well, they've been building a lot of transit-oriented development. If you compare the Oregon counties that make up the metropolitan area to the Clark County, Washington, which is also part of the metropolitan area, you can see dramatic differences in the density of development. About half is transit supportive in the Oregon counties, whereas only maybe a quarter is in the Washington County, Clark County, Washington. From work done by my former colleague, Garrett Knapp, who's at the National Center for Smart Growth, that's where I worked until just, you know, like today, I guess. Or maybe, what is today? Yeah, no, I'm off the payroll as of yesterday, I think it is. Anyway, he did this study of Portland, and development densities have gone up since 1990, and internal connectivity of streets has improved for subdivisions, have more connected, internally connected streets. That's important for walkability and direct routing of trips. That's improved. External connectivity has not improved. That's one area where Portland isn't doing better. That's connections to the external street network for residential development. A land use mix has improved, and commercial facilities are closer than they were before 1990, and transit access has improved. So these are pretty outstanding accomplishments. It was done in part, and I'm going to go through this very quickly. You can get. We're making this PowerPoint available. We can. Yeah, let's do that. State planning framework. They way back in 1973 adopted a state planning framework, which was groundbreaking. It still is amazing. For example, requiring cities and counties to rezone land, upzone land, to improve affordability, to draw urban growth boundaries around themselves. That was all in '73. The state process was set in motion. I don't think I have time to describe this, but for those of you who are planners or policy types and are looking for a good model, the Transportation Planning Rule, which was adopted in 1991, is a very good one. The one thing I'll mention right now is it's set as one of its primary goals a reduction in VMT per capita. I don't know of any other place that did that way back in 1991. Now they've relaxed these requirements a little bit. Although they still have requirements, they reduced it from 10% to 5%, and then provided an alternative way of computing VMT, or the reduction in auto dependence. But this was part of the state rulemaking process. I can talk about ballot measure 3749 if anyone asks. Regional planning in Portland, they went through a planning process which I assume Minneapolis, St. Paul has done in part. It's called scenario planning, but I'm going to very quickly cover it. They considered alternative futures. This is the same thing Sacramento did. Alternative futures, more or less sprawling. They evaluated those alternative futures with respect to a lot of performance measures, including VMT. The 2040 plan, and notice they were looking out, and no one was doing this back in the early 90s when they did it in Portland. They were looking out 50 years. rather than 20 years, because they understood that, land use changes slowly over time. But in terms of VMT, land consumption, transit use, they came up with a preferred concept, a 2040 recommended plan, which is essentially centers connected by light rail. That's the way you can look at it, and bus. That's the essence of their plan. One big center, downtown Portland, and then these regional centers, and then town centers, lots of them. I had to survey every one of them, and these things are for real. Really great emphasis in Portland Metro on creation of centers, and I'll talk about transit in just a second. Regional growth management, the urban growth boundary was established in 1979. My understanding is that you're contemplating something like that. Good idea. Density targets were established. Local governments were required to rezone land for higher densities. So in the urban core, 10 units per acre. In the inner suburbs, 8 units per acre. In the outer suburbs, 6 units per acre. Multifamily targets were established, and transportation investments and open space acquisition became part. This is just making the point that that they take the 2040 plan and Portland Metro's role very, very seriously in the Portland area, and a lot of emphasis on transit-oriented development. This is the most interesting thing that happened in Portland. In the adopted plan, transportation plan, in the state transportation plan, there was to have been an outer beltway around Portland. Basically, the beltway was killed. There was a legal challenge, in part based on the fact the beltway would cause sprawl and increase VMT. That was part of the reason, or part of the basis for the challenge. The challenge was successful. And instead of building the beltway, they decided to put their money into light rail, and they got a pretty good system already. You're a few years behind, but you're moving in the same direction here. A lot of planned expansions. It's impressive, and with the rail system that is evolving, they are emphasizing transit-oriented development in station areas. Within a quarter-mile, half-mile of stations, and there are a lot of TODs. Downtown Portland is a TOD, Orenco Station's a TOD, 7,000 new homes along the west side max alignment. A couple years ago, this is probably more than 7,000 right now. And in addition, because there's a tendency to spend too much time thinking and talking about transit, I think, relative to other modes, they've emphasized the pedestrian mode and bicycle as well. A factoid, transit represents under 2% of all trips in the U.S., a much higher percentage of work trips, a much higher percentage of trips in metropolitan areas than non-metropolitan, but it's 2% overall. Walking is 8% of all trips. So walking is a very serious mode of travel. And they had the first Complete Streets Act in 1971. It was called the Bike Bill, that required, and that's why when you go there you see so many streets with bike lanes, required bicyclists to be accommodated every time a road was built or reconstructed. And they have policies that really very amazing policies on street cross sections, skinny street policies have been adopted, and they have traffic calming and other things to make the pedestrian environment nicer. Okay, I am down to my last 2 minutes. Excellent. I'm going to give you a very, very quick version of California, what's happening there. In part, what's happened, and Growing Cooler was part of it. The book and everything that led up to it helped, I think, it's what we've been told anyway, change the mindset a little bit. The idea that technology won't get us there is now widely accepted. The fact that urban development can make a difference is widely accepted. In 2006, they passed the